We begin our virtual tour in the historic city of Gdańsk, which in past ages was one of the largest and the richest commercial ports in Europe. Owing to the city's location in the Vistula Delta, as well as with regard to the role this played in the past and still plays today, this is an important cultural, economic and recreational center, especially for residents of adjacent areas. While walking through the streets of the old town and along the Motława riverfront, one can feel the atmosphere of the old times, while characteristic buildings allow one to imagine the wealth of their then residents, merchants and townspeople. Vessels from numerous countries entered the port, taking mainly food and in return bringing exotic spices and other luxury goods. Trade was carried out in this port, which was built up with granaries on both sides of the Vistula and Motława River embankments. It sometimes occurred, especially during the Dominican fair, that 400 sailing ships waited on the roadstead in the Gdańsk Bay, along the rivers as far as the present Zielona Brama, Green Gate. The captain's office was located in the Green Gate, which closed ulica Długi Targ, Long Market Street, from the port side. Stalls stood on both sides of this street. Bargains were made, and residents from adjacent areas would sell their products there. Today, together with ulica Długa, Long Street, this is the most representative street in the city. Nowadays, there are motorboats on the rivers of Motława and Vistula, and the former sailing ships have been replaced by yachts which enter the Gdańsk marina from all over Europe. It is here that fragments of two different geographical areas converge, namely of Żuławy Gdańskie, the Gdańskie Fens, a part of Żuławy Wiślane, Vistula Marshland, and Wyżyna Gdańska, the Gdańsk Uplands, which is a part of Pojezierze Kaszubskie, the Kashubian Lake District. This location and the historical, economic and cultural links of the areas adjacent to the city contributed to the name of the region, Three Landscapes of Gdańsk. On walking through Brama Nizinna, the lowland gate, we will enter Żuławy Gdańskie. The landscape of the Vistula Delta appears before our eyes. This is characterized by a completely flat terrain and fertile soil, which continues to be the wealth of this land, both in the past and today. Interestingly enough, for centuries, until the Second World War, this land was cultivated by settlers of peasant origin. They owned and rented large areas of this fertile land, on average several dozen or even over 100 hectares. The affluence of the peasantry of the Żuławy region was legendary and unique in Europe in the past centuries. They sold their abundant crops as well as cattle and horses through Gdańsk merchants, and during the Dominican fair, directly to ships anchored in the port. The wealth of these people is displayed in architectural monuments, namely in arcaded houses, which still exist, albeit in small quantities, and these are undoubtedly unique and characteristic of the region. In front of us, we can see one of the best preserved residential buildings of a rich peasant from the early 18th century in the village of Trutnowy. This arcaded house, together with farm buildings, was a self-sufficient rural homestead. This is a large building with a characteristic front facade, one wing and an arcade, which protrudes onto the street and is supported by 8 pillars with a decorative swords. The number of supporting pillars confirmed the material condition of the owner. In contrast to the number of monuments and residential architecture, Numerous religious buildings have survived to this day, with a structure characteristic of the Żuławy Gothic. With clocks on their towers ringing out the hours, these were also equipped with organs. One example is a church in Krzywe Koło, where in addition to the architecture characteristic of the Żuławy region, an authentic interior from the turn of the 17th and 18th centuries has been preserved. It is a single-aisle building with a tower which was once crowned with a pointed wooden helmet, while now covered with metal. Inside, lavishly polychrome decorated stalls have been preserved. In these, rich villagers used to sit during services. On the walls there are paintings of saints as well as of notable residents. This creates an extraordinary interior with a unique atmosphere. Taking advantage of the charms of Żuławy Gdańskie, moving alongside the Motława River, we reach a church in Wróblewo, delightfully located just by the river. In a rather austere interior, you can admire a restored pulpit from the 17th century and a reproduction of an altar from the year 1500, the original of which can be seen in the National Museum of Gdańsk. Near the church, one can use infrastructure prepared for tourists. A canoe harbor, shelters with benches and tables, as well as an outdoor gym. We end our walk through Żuławy Gdańskie, a completely flat, spacious area with unique sights. The idyllic character of the landscape, a wide and distant horizon, willows growing along roads, and drainage canals. These give you the chance to escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Time truly slows down in this place. After crossing the A1 motorway, we encounter a completely different landscape. It is the Gdańsk Uplands, a fragment of the Kashubian Lake district with its characteristic forest landscape, moraine hills, river valleys, and glacial lakes. While performing a recreational function for the inhabitants of the city, this is also an area of investment in suburban properties. The enduring appeal of this place, just outside the city limits, attracts not only the residents of Gdańsk, but also tourists. Wild forest, post-glacial lakes, as well as hills covered in dense forest, are ideal areas for exploration. The natural enclave of the Otomiński forest is especially charming, with a network of forest paths which cater for the needs of cyclists and hikers among amazing views. Beautifully situated on the Łapińskie and Kolbuckie lakes, tourists' resorts provide a wide range of equipment for water recreation, beaches and bathing places for children and adults. A special place is occupied by the Queen of Kashubian rivers, Radunia, which sometimes has a typical mountain character. Since the Middle Ages, the river has supplied water through the canal to the large mill in Gdańsk, and then also electricity after the construction of several power stations. Traveling along the river from Łapino to Pruszcz Gdański, we will see several power plants still in operation, as well as unique in terms of architecture and equipment from the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries. Located on the Radunia River, dated back to the second half of the 19th century, the old paper mill in Łapino is well worth visiting. The river was used in the process of manufacturing cardboard. Nowadays, this functions as a museum and as a holiday resort with hotel places. The Gdańsk Uplands region is not only recreation but also history. The 14th century sacral building in Pręgowo may captivate one's attention as the only one built of fieldstones in the entire area. Lovers of the history and unique old art may admire medieval colorful frescoes depicting biblical scenes on the church walls. All those fascinated by these three landscapes are welcome to visit our portal Krajobrazygdańskie.com. A special mobile application will be used for active tours. Try, taste, experience.